Well, that's good. So we're going to go ahead and start. But we're glad, our youngest attendee. So if we can get everybody to take their seats. I can't decide if there's a message in the weather tonight, if we're going to lose power again in Washtenaw. I'm not taking a shot at anybody. But we are going, I think we're going to see people coming in because there are many accidents out there. We have other legislators that are attending, and they've run into bad weather coming from Lansing to here. I even hit 4 accidents coming from a different part of the district. So, but we want to welcome you, and we want to give everybody time to be able to ask questions, to participate. So we're going to go ahead and start. I want to give you a little background of what today is. I have been at every legislator here and myself have been at numerous, we've held town halls, we go to as many places as we can to listen to people, to hear from people. When we have had power outages, we have been out. I was particularly struck. Everybody who has power outages has, serious problems. I mean, the February outages, the number of farmers that were impacted and what was happening to their stock. We had someone who almost died because they had no power, couldn't get up and down the stairs. Their oxygen supply went out. People who have lost everything in the refrigerator, freezers, and it's happened multiple times. In Ann Arbor, we have seen restaurants close. And I think people are just frustrated and want to talk about the issues. And most people do, and I do believe that Washtenaw County, and I know there are people here from DTE, this is not, and we have 2 providers in Washtenaw County, and this isn't targeting any of the counties, but people are angry, and we hear it. So I think what the legislators are trying to tell you is they hear you. And Dan Scripps is the chair of the Public Service Commission, and many people don't even know the Public Service Commission exists, that their job is to oversee the public utilities in the state. They set rates. They probably don't have some of the powers that I think the legislature would like to give them in terms of when there are outages, holding people accountable, looking at what the issues are. And what we really wanted to do today, which we try to do, is, so I called Dan a couple months ago when there had been maybe the 10th or 12th, I'm not exaggerating, except as many of you know, and said, Dan, we need a Public Service Commission hearing in Washtenaw County. And I don't want this to be, it's not targeting one city or one. We really need to talk about what the issues are, what's on people's minds. He needs to hear the stories. His commission staff is here. And tonight, and the legislators are here because we know individually and collectively there's an issue in Washtenaw County. So tonight's the night to talk about what's on your mind so Dan can hear and get for his commission. And maybe there's some issues that we need to even be where I know the legislators would like to see some legislation that would strengthen their ability for oversight of the public utilities. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I'm going to. So I want to welcome you. We want to quote John Dingell tonight. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We want to listen more and talk less tonight, except we want Dan to really hear what's on your mind and for him to talk about the role of what the Public Service Commission is and what their role is. I'm going to invite Dan up in a minute, and then after that we'll introduce each of the legislators very briefly, and as I say, I know some more are coming in. I also know that we've got a couple of other government officials here. Lynette Finley, who's the Superior Town Clerk, I hugged, but I don't know where you're sitting, because there she is in the back, because I don't have everybody's used to my reading glasses, but now I need the distance glasses. Caroline Saunders is here from Washtenaw, commissioner, and she works at Eastern. And we have Lee Andre from Tecumseh, who's a Lenawee. I can't read what you are, Lee, but we're really glad that you're here. So, and this really was for everybody. And we want people to be able to express their opinion, and I just, Chris Watson, where are you, Chris? Nobody, oh, there you, see, Chris, I don't have my glasses on. I thought that one of my staff person was Annie Somerville, so that will tell you how bad I'm too vain to get bifocals, but I need them. So thank you, Felicia. Did I miss anybody else? Thanks. Anyway, I'm going to introduce Dan Scripps, who is the chair of the Public Service Commission, to talk about what they do, issues that they have, and then we'll very briefly go down everybody can see Senator Sue Sink, Senator Irwin, Rep. Felicia Brayback. I can't tell if it's Jennifer or Carrie, but it's Jennifer Conlon and Carrie Regan. So we're all here. There's only, Jason Morgan would be here, but he's getting married. And we gave him, he was like, oh, Debbie, it's like my rehearsal dinner and the family's all here. And I was like, Jason, we'll cover for you. So that's why he's not here. But this really matters to us, and we want you to know that we all do work together at the federal, state, and local level. So Dan, thank you for doing this. And he has a 4.5-hour drive, drove himself. So that tells you how much he cares. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for that, Congresswoman Dingell, and I will absolutely follow the always great advice of Mr. Dingell and use my 2 ears more than my one mouth. But I did want to just provide an overview of some of the work that's ongoing with the Commission and what we do. I will say it's a special treat to be back in Washtenaw County. As I was driving around today, it was 20 years ago that I met my wife here in Ann Arbor. We met in the law library, so I feel like Representative Morgan could have come here and we just could have combined the wedding and the town hall to great effect. But one of our first dates, actually, that summer of 2003, was cooking over a stove, or over a grill, grilling frozen pizza during a power outage. That was a different kind of power outage. That was the grid scale power outage of 2003. But it sort of feels full circle on the eve of my wedding anniversary. We'll celebrate 17 years tomorrow, to be back in Ann Arbor talking about power outages. So romance is in the air tonight for sure. In terms of the Commission, so our mission is to serve the public by ensuring safe, reliable, and accessible energy and telecommunication services at reasonable rates. The underlined words are the ones that we really try and focus on. In terms of really it's the safety of the system, the reliability, which is what we're talking about here today, the accessibility that this needs to be available for everyone, and the rates ultimately need to be reasonable. And it's a challenge getting all four of those things to balance, candidly, but that's the work that we do. In terms of the Commission's background, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but we were actually formed as the Michigan Railroad Commission in 1883, so this is 150 years of regulation for us. We've been the Public Service Commission since 1939. There are 3 of us who are appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the state senate to serve staggered 6-year terms, and not more than 2 of us can be members of the same political party. All 3 of the current commissioners were appointed by Governor Whitmer, and I am blessed to serve with some really fantastic colleagues as well. Reliability is not a new issue for you, and it's not a new issue for us either. It's been a core challenge. I was appointed in 2019 in the midst of or right after the polar vortex that year. I remember being at Detroit Metro Airport, getting the alert on my phone that was asking all of us to turn down our thermostats to try and keep the gas grid in that instance operational, but some significant both gas and electric challenges at that time. In the wake of that, Governor Whitmer directed the Commission to develop a statewide energy assessment. It's still a useful document. It's not one of these reports that sits on the shelf. I literally have 2, one on my desk at home and one on my desk in Lansing, that I still look to at least on a weekly basis. But we looked at the electricity sector, the electricity system, the natural gas system, propane and delivered fuels, looking at energy security and emergency response. It continues to be a document and included a number of recommendations on how we can strengthen Michigan's energy systems. We also have, since 2018, been requiring the utilities to submit distribution plans. It wasn't good enough to just look at their plans as part of their rate cases when they came in asking for rate increases. We wanted broader context of what is the longer-term strategy here, and how do the individual investments that they're asking for their customers to pay for fit into that strategy, including a real focus on reliability. In 2019, understanding that we were in the midst of a pretty significant energy transition, we launched the My Power Grid initiative that's really looking at customer engagement, integration of new technologies, and grid planning, including planning for increased reliability. Because at the base of it, we know and have known what all of you know as well, and that the system isn't performing the way that we expect it to, and the way that we need it to. And so that has really underlined a lot of our work over the time that I've been on the commission over the last 4.5 years. One of the first rate cases that I was on the commission for in 2019 ultimately authorized DTE to spend more on tree trimming and do it in a way that was more affordable than the usual investments that they make in the grid. So at that point, I think we authorized $70 million on enhanced tree trimming and vegetation management, really trying to address some of the backlog on the system and get to a more regular cycle. Trees continue to be the #1 source of distribution outages, and so it's a place that we've put a significant amount of attention. We've also seen a number of storm investigations, going back to 2014 and indeed before that. But in the last couple of years, they've taken on a different character. In 2017, we had what most called the most damaging windstorm event in Michigan history. In 2019, we had the polar vortex. In 2020, we had a series of storms that resulted in some fatalities. In 2021, we had storm after storm, where we had sort of major outages more than once a week over that summer storm season. In 2022, another significant event that also included fatalities. And then, of course, this year we had the worst ice event in 50 years, and more recently, 7 tornadoes touched down in Michigan and obviously had significant impacts in Washtenaw County. So understanding that this weather is now no longer historic every single time, but is the new normal, how do we make sure that we have a grid that's keeping pace with that? And that's been one of the major challenges and one of the major questions that we've asked, including series of technical conferences and other things to understand what else we need to do that we haven't been able to do so far. That includes additional utility data collection and then, as I mentioned, storm responses and investigations. And then finally, this is the last substantive slide that I have. In just the last 2 years, these are some of the initiatives that we've kicked off, including providing additional transparency around utility data, trying to get reliability-based data, not just at the system level, but at the individual electric circuit level, but also zip codes and census tracts, understanding that there are parts of the system that operate better and worse, and those often sort of overlay some of the significant racial disparities and income disparities that we see more broadly. The Resilience Technical Conference, trying to understand what do we need to do, even as we work to rebuild the grid and improve overall reliability, to make sure that people are okay when outages happen. And this came from a reporter's question to me saying, essentially, what are you going to do in the meantime? That we can't wait 7 years, and so how do you make sure that those who are most vulnerable have protections in place? How do you work on the individual scale resilience even as you rebuild the system? In 2021, after the outages of 2021, and then, in 2022, after the outages of 2021, and then again a major storm event in August of last year, we launched a first-of-its-kind utility audit, trying to understand what other similarly situated utilities in other states are doing that we can learn from and implement those best practices here to improve reliability. We've modified the Commission's actual structure to put more focus on reliability and distribution planning. Increased outage credits. Previously, they were a one-time $25 credit if you qualified that you had to apply for. They're now $35. Actually, we just increased them to about $38 indexed for inflation. And once you're eligible for the credits, it's an additional $38 for every day that you remain without power, and they're automatic. You no longer have to apply for them. And then finally, earlier this spring, we launched an incentives and disincentives work group. And last month, in late August, we outlined a straw proposal. And what we call it is Reliability Plus. What are the metrics that are most important to customers on reliability? And then as a second step, after we get our arms around that, how do we make sure that we're keeping pace with the increase in distributed energy resources that we know is going to happen, and making sure our grid's ready for rooftop solar, the rise in electric vehicles and the like. But that first part on distribution reliability is looking at things that I think are the pain points for customers in Michigan. How long outages last when they happen. We're about middle of the pack for the frequency of outages, but we're really down in the tables in terms of how long they happen, particularly in storm events, which isn't news to the folks in this room. And then how many people experience multiple outages, not just 1 or 2 each year, but 7+, 8+. And how do we get those worst performing circuits the prioritization and attention they need so the same folks aren't on the worst performing circuits year in and year out. So that's where we're starting. We outlined a series of metrics that we think are the right starting place, but we're accepting comments and reply comments. And we'll outline by the end of this year at least a starting place for how we tie utilities' financial performance to the experience that their customers have to better align sort of how utilities make their business decisions with what's right for their customers. So that's a little bit of what we've been up to. I really do want to sort of stop now and let my colleagues introduce themselves, but also to hear from you. I will say that we've done a series of these after outages, including earlier this year an online town hall, and then ones in Jackson and Dearborn. And they've really been invaluable in informing the Commission's work to hear the ideas as well as the frustration from people. And that contributes to some of the solutions that we've been working to implement. But we know, and this is what I'll end with, we know more needs to happen. And I think the best ideas come from the people who experience it most directly. So thanks for letting me be with you tonight.
Thank you, Dan. Why don't we just... Sue, why don't we start with you and we'll just go on down.
Good evening. I'm Sue Schink. I'm the senator for the 14th District, which covers about half of Washtenaw County and about 3/4 of Jackson County. And if Jeff Irwin doesn't represent you, I probably do. So thank you, Congresswoman Dingell, for bringing us together. One of the things I really appreciate about you is your recognition and willingness to bring us together to find solutions to thorny problems, because a lot of times that is the way we can find solutions. And so just want to express that appreciation here tonight. Also, I want to express my appreciation for the chair of the MPSC, who I think has really taken the MPSC forward to serve the residents of Michigan as that body has never done before. And I've been spending quite a bit of time over the last few weeks talking with Chair Scripps, because I am working on a bill, Senate Bill 502, to expand the authority of the MPSC to explicitly consider climate change, affordability, reliability, and equity. And Chair Scripps has been a really dedicated partner in that process. One of the things that is really clear to me working through that process is that the utilities who have known about climate change, at least DTE, I have a little footnote in one of my documents that it's since 1968 there was an ad where they're talking about climate change. They've known since 1968. Not a lot has changed since then. Not enough, I'll just say. I was at the University of Michigan in the 1990s where we were talking about the potential damages from climate change that we could expect at the end of this century, but they're already happening now. And so I want to just, encourage, I want to hear what you have to say, and I think that's really important. And also, I hope that we all keep encouraging the utilities to play a very constructive role in our future, because without their participation, we're being held to a fossil fuel future that a lot of us don't want. So again, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it, and really excited to hear what people have to say.
Good evening, everyone. I, like my colleagues, want to do more listening, so I'll try to be brief. I also want to thank Congresswoman Dingell. We're lucky to have her, and this forum, I think, is just another example of that. And I'm very grateful to Chair Scripps for driving down to our community to join us because this is such an important discussion. Look, when I look at electricity, there are three main important components. Is it reliable? Is it priced at an affordable rate? And what kind of pollution are they kicking out while they're generating our energy? How is it affecting our climate? Those are the three things: reliability, price, and environmental impact. And I mean, it's sad that these are the facts, but our incumbent utility here in Southeast Michigan has relatively low reliability compared to any national standard. It has relatively high prices, especially for residents who've seen massive price increases over the last 10 years as we've shifted costs from industry to residents. And it has terrible environmental performance. I've been working on environmental issues for over 20 years now, and I can't tell you how frustrated I am with DTE. So, what I do want to say on a positive note, though, is that ever since we've had a new MPSC under this governor, and we've had folks like Chairman Scripps involved, there have been a number of changes, and you heard some of the work that Chairman Scripps mentioned about what they're doing. So I love what he has to say, but it's fair to say that there's a lot more to be done. I think that Senator Schink's bill is an important step forward to give them more tools to be more robust regulators. We absolutely, I've heard that the outage credits are increasing and you've made them automatic. That's extremely positive, but they're still way too low, right? Because Congresswoman Dingell laid it out. When we have these regular outages and they last far too long, longer than they do in other states, people lose food in their fridge, they lose medicine, they might lose breast milk. I mean, people lose time at work, their kids' school gets canceled. It's incredibly damaging to businesses, to families, and the performance that we're getting out of this company that we have guaranteed a monopoly to is just pitiful. And we need to increase these outage credits to hold them accountable. So there's a lot more we need to do as well. We need to give residents more options. There's all sorts of change in the energy markets now. There's all sorts of opportunities that people have with rooftop solar and with storage. If the utilities don't want to serve our state with reliable, affordable, clean energy, we need to have the shackles taken off of our citizens and business owners so that they can do it. So those are the things that I'm most interested in fighting for in Lansing. And this is an incredibly important topic. If you can't tell, I'm a little bit somber about it because we've been on this fight for so long and we're up against so much. Because when you have a system where all of the risk is public and all of the profit is private, it's a recipe for poor service, and it's not in the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Irwin. It's always a challenge going after you, especially in this regard, because you speak so eloquently about it. But I also want to share with my colleagues, thanks to Congresswoman Dingell for bringing us together, as always. She really is kind of the lead of our team, and I'm always grateful to her. Chairman, thank you for making the drive, especially right before your anniversary. We're grateful to you and your partner and family for making that sacrifice. The thing that I know and continue to think about with the utilities is that we can do better. We can do better in all the areas that both of the senators talked about. We just can do better. Our residents deserve more. They deserve more reliability. They deserve better costs. And it's incumbent upon us to find those solutions and to push that forward through our legislative bodies. And so I'm grateful for all the work that has been done prior to me joining our delegation, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'm grateful to all of you for being here tonight, and looking forward to hearing the ideas that you have. Obviously, there are many that we have, and folks are even right now working on those. Senator Schenck talked about hers, but Senator Irwin has done some. Our colleagues on the House side are diligently working. But there's always more that we can do, and I just keep coming back to we can do better. And so I'm grateful to be here tonight with all of you and excited to learn more about how we can then harness that and move that forward in our legislative chamber. Oh, I'm Felicia Brayback. I'm so sorry. Felicia Brayback. Thanks. Thanks, Gary. I'm Felicia Brayback. I get to represent the 33rd District.
Is this working? I am State Representative Jennifer Conlon. I represent the 48th District, which is Northwest Ann Arbor, Ann Arbor Township, and then goes all the way up into Livingston County. So I have a lot of rural areas up there. I have Pinckney and up between Brighton and Howell, and then over to Jackson to Waterloo Township. So it's a very rural area, and I personally am a new representative. I've been in office 9 months, and during that time, I've lost my power 3 times for 5 days. So this feels quite personal to me. My 89-year-old mother lives with me. She's on a stair chair. It stops working after 24 hours on the battery, and I have to find a place to put her. And even her chair that she sits in during the day that reclines is stuck once we lose our power. And I also, my older brother lives with me. I'm in a big house with a lot of people, and children come and go, and we lose all the food and my mother's medicine, and it's incredibly hard. So I know what people are going through. And I'm excited to hear tonight, because I do not sit on our Energy Committee in the House of Representatives, but I have before me a number of bills that our colleagues are working on that would reimburse people for food. As Senator Irwin was saying, you lose all your food and your medicines and breast milk, or in my mother's case, you know, her needed medications or whatever, and it's very expensive. And I also do have a high utility bill because a lot of people live in my house, and I don't see any discount when I've got 5 days out. So hopefully that's going to change. On the very last time that we lost it, on the 5th day, that Sunday morning, DTE was at the end of my road, and I actually thanked them. I know these workers work hard when these things happen. I said, thank you for being here. Please tell me you're going to fix my power. And he said, you know, oh yeah, I just have to do this. And he took one little line and just put it up on a little hook. Now, granted, that might have been the end of 20 steps, but I also just wondered, was it really just that? And if it was that, could it have been, you know, done sooner? Which is why there's a bill that actually asks in the House right now that would ask for, you know, DTE to kind of disclose monthly, or ask our utilities to disclose monthly the number of and duration of outages, and exactly give that transparency for the month of how long it was, to have some accountability so we know that these are real situations that took a long time to fix, or maybe didn't. And tree trimming obviously is a big part of this too. So I'm really excited to listen. Thank you, Congresswoman Dingell, for having us here. Thank you, Chair Scripps, for being here. And I'm just here to listen and hear what you all have to say and to learn tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm State Rep Carrie Rangans. My district is the western part of the city of Ann Arbor, kind of southwestern Washtenaw County, and then southeast Jackson County. So in my district, I have some portion of it that's covered by Consumers Energy and some portion that's covered by DTE. And this is my first term, just like Rep Conlon, so I don't have a lot of experience as an elected official, but one thing I have done so far is learned really how to listen to folks and hear what you're saying in order to figure out how does that translate into any sort of legislative policy that we might be able to do. I have a lot of experience in other policy areas outside of energy and environmental issues, so I'm really thankful actually that our delegation has so many long working experts in this field. So I'm very excited to hear what you have to say and figure out if there's anything that we can actually do to target with our work where we work in the state legislative policy arena. Thanks Congresswoman Dingell for having us here tonight, and Chair Scripps for being here to help us listen and maybe translate for some of us that don't know what people are saying, for us to be able to take action. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Okay, so we want to hear, thank you guys. You have a group of state legislators that really are trying to listen and work. And if we have time, maybe you all can even talk about some of the legislation that's going on in Lansing, which is very important. But we came to listen to you. So we have mics on each side. And we want to hear from you, and please line up, and if you can't walk, we can bring the mic to you.
Rep Wilson is on his way also. So he said he's battling the rain and the traffic. So he may be able to join us soon.
I forgot. I knew Jimmy was on his way, so I didn't. He was the only one that couldn't. Jason was the only one that couldn't be here. Everybody cared. They were like, we're there. And then I didn't even know if I was going to be here. It's been such a quiet week, you know. So we'll start right down here.
Hi, my name is Larry Junk. I want to thank everybody for coming out on this rainy night. Great participation here by our legislators. The major focus tonight is on reliability, but I want to emphasize my concern about climate change and air pollution and how those are affecting the citizens of our area of Michigan and the rest of the world. I'm a physician, and I'm especially concerned about the health consequences of climate change, as well as effects on our animal and plant life and so on. Mr. Scripps referred to our weather as being the new normal, and I think it's clear that climate change is responsible in part for some of these weather events. And in contrast to referring to it as the new normal implies that we're going to see the same kind of weather going forward. I'm afraid we're not going to see the same kind of weather going forward. Climate change is worsening. We can expect extreme weather events to be worsening along with that. So my main question for Mr. Scripps in particular, or anybody else, is what else can MPSC be doing to move the utilities much more strongly towards sustainable energy sources? That would include electrification of our homes, measures that would support the A20 power plan, and measures to get DTE in particular and other utilities to move much more strongly towards wind and solar energy.
Thank you for that, and I want to answer that, but my guess is that some of the other folks on this panel may have some thoughts as well. So in 2008, we passed the first renewable portfolio standard. That was 10% by 2015. We hit that at a fraction of the cost that we thought it was going to take. In 2016, the legislature expanded that to 15% by 2021, and also created a new planning framework, the Integrated Resource Planning Framework, that allows us to look at the broad mix of resources and try and identify what is the most reasonable and prudent, looking at both energy generation sources, but also energy efficiency, the work that can be done in homes and businesses. And I will say that we've not only hit those marks, we've gone beyond them. We're doing twice as much energy efficiency as is required by statute, and we've hit and exceeded the renewable targets. But 15% is a pretty low standard, and so there's legislation in the legislature right now that would expand that. The governor put on the table a 100% clean energy target, and there's work to be done. And then to Senator Schink's point, the work, we are economic regulators. For the last 150 years, we've been economic regulators. And so we've made decisions that we think have had significant impact on the amount of clean energy on the system, but we've done it because it's been the cheapest option, it's been the most reasonable and prudent from an economic and ratepayer option. The ability to consider climate in making our decisions, I think, would give us additional tools in the toolbox as we confront the realities of climate change to bring those considerations into our decision making as well.
I want to just, when people say this is the new normal, I live now, I'm an official Ann Arbor resident, but after redistricting, but in Dearborn, my basement was flooded more than I could tell you. And everybody kept saying these were once in 100-year storms, except I had once in 100-year storms. I had 5 of them in 8 years. And the most recent storms, we were all woke up to the drain commissioner, who, Evan Pratt, said to us we had a once in 400-year storm on the most recent incident. Belleville had 7.4 inches of rain in 4 hours. Rockwood had 7 inches in 4 hours. And what we're saying is the pattern's getting worse because of weather. And we're not, what we have isn't built for that resiliency. So I think everybody's just saying, stop saying it's once every 100. And, you know, Evan said once in 400, because we got to stop saying it's once every 100, because it's happening. Like, we're having them, like that night, we had 2 back-to-back storms. We had the storms on a Wednesday night, and then on Thursday night, we had 7 tornadoes, 4 in the 6th district, and I actually think there were more. So everybody here, this table acknowledges global climate is real, and they're working on legislation at the state level to try to address some of this, to build resiliency. And I'm also going to tell you something. We have authorized real dollars at the federal level to come in and help build that resiliency, to build alternative sources. And what happens in Lansing will determine if they pass strong legislation, it will double. Right now, you're going to get, I don't have the numbers in my head, I was just looking for them, but it's a $6 billion, I think, something right now. But if this bill passes, you'll get $12 billion something dollars for the state of Michigan for investing in this. So what they're working on in Lansing is very, very important, and again shows that partnership at the federal and the state level. And I know it's Sue Shink's legislation.
A couple things that would help move the utilities along. As written, as introduced, the bill that I'm working on was very strong, and there's an incredible amount of political pressure to weaken it, and I actually had to do what I call pitch a fit to have it as strong as it is now, which is less strong than many of the environmental and social justice organizations that I bet a lot of you belong to would like to see, because the political power of the utilities in Lansing is so strong. It's kind of like a big bulldozer. And, you know, I do think that they need to be at the table. And also I think that we need to recognize as a state, like, climate change doesn't care about how anybody feels about anything. It's about what we do. And when somebody is going without food, what's going on in their bodies doesn't care how anybody who works at any of the utilities feel. It's about them not having food because it went bad, because the electricity went out. People have died because of the reliability. And yet, so this is just another plug, well, DTE made $1.1 billion in profit last year. Their CEO, who's a pleasant man, made $11 million, as I understand. And that's concerning to me, and right now we don't have a good way, and it sounds like there might be some changes, but we don't have a good way to regulate that. So I think that, I'll just say this here, one of the best ways to get the utilities to move faster is to get the money from ratepayers that goes to publicly regulated monopolies out of politics would go a long, long way. So, thanks.
I just want to very briefly make 2 quick points. One, I want to highlight something that Chairman Scripps said that was really important. What he said was that we have this IRP process now, and the climate change gains that we've made since these IRPs were created are because renewable energy is the cheapest, most reasonable sources to deploy. And so I'm stomping my feet on this a little bit because this is a really important point. It's not 1995 anymore. And I constantly hear people in Lansing say, well, we can't do solar energy, it's too expensive. There has been a complete change in the energy market around the price and the efficiency of solar panels. And what the chairman just said is incredibly important. deploying more renewable energy will not just improve the environment, not just direct more of our economic resources into the state of Michigan, but also saves us money. And then I also just wanted to highlight something that Congressman Dingell said, which is that for the first time in my entire lifetime, Congress took huge action to support our infrastructure, both the roads and bridges and sewers, but also our energy system. And the dollars that she just talked about coming to the state, those Biden bucks are going to make a huge difference for reliability and price and climate action. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Next. Go to that side.
Thank you all for coming. What I have to say probably will fall on deaf ears anyways. I have, between my parents and I, we've lived in our house for 53 years. In 2023, this fiscal year, this calendar year, we've lost power more than we have in the other 52 years combined. In February, we had the ice storm. I sort of understand losing power, although ice storms are not unusual for Michigan. We lost power for 4 days. I see nothing to help reimburse for the expenses. We didn't qualify. They don't tell us what we have to do to qualify. We just don't qualify. In July, 3 days out of 4, they turned our power off for 3 to 4 hours a day for no apparent reason, because then they just turned it back on again. Okay? August, we lost power for 3 more days. We still haven't seen anything about any reimbursement that you people are talking about. We probably don't qualify for that either. A friend of mine gave me a small generator. I had an electrical cord running from my backyard to my neighbor's front living room so that her medical equipment could run. I don't think this is necessary. And what do? They fine us for using our electricity between 3 and 7. That's when a lot of people come home from work. How are they supposed to do their laundry before midnight? Any of you have kids, you know you can't do just one load and laundry's done. Mm-hmm. How do they eat when they have to work all day? They have to pay the extra price. This is BS. I'm sorry, it really is. That's all I have to say. I'm just bitching.
Thank you.
I should have done this at the beginning, so we have at the Commission a customer assistance division that takes complaints that can help with investigating if you are eligible to connect with the utilities to understand that process. We've got, I'll be here afterwards as well, but we've got a couple other people, and if Rika and Steve can raise hands, they're up there. I'd love to, we can connect you with, we both have a website and a toll-free number, and make sure that you get the information on how to contact our customer assistance division so they can look into that on your behalf.
Thank you. Over here.
Hi there, folks. My name's Tom Brennan, and I live in Superior Township. And Dan, and I want to thank everybody for putting this together, especially Dan Scripps, Chairman Scripps. And I think you probably recognize me from a file about this thick, because I have filed complaints so many times over the years on DTE. I proposed a solution when I submitted comments, and this is probably going to be kind of radical, but in the long run, what we need to do is get rid of the for-profit utility companies, because these are public, hence the term public. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and establish regional power authorities where either A, you elect, the people elect the members, the predetermined terms, like all our elected officials, and that, or local governments appoint the members of the boards. So, I mean, I just want to put that out there, propose solutions. But in the meantime, in the short term, I think we need to do what other states do. Not only have DTE pay these credits to all the customers, but actually fine them. Fine them. Big time. Thank you.
Thank you. Over here?
Is this thing working? Okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
My name is Milt Baker, and I live on the northeast side of Ann Arbor. I've lived there for 30 years, and the power reliability has always been pretty poor. And the bad thing is it's getting worse. In 2022, we had 8 major outages, and I define a major outage as more than 2 hours out. In 2023, I have some logging software now that tells me whenever we have an interruption. We've actually had 17 of them, albeit some of them are small, but it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. And we have talked to DTE, we have talked to MPSC, and we really haven't seen any improvements. I also want to make the point that recently Ann Arbor did a study about what's important to people with relation to electricity, and of course reliability came out to be #1. In my opinion, the business model for producing and distributing electricity in Michigan is flawed. And that's what's really got to be attacked here. Like, where does the ratepayer even fit in? If you want to buy electricity, you have to buy it from DTE. If you don't like the service, well, there's nothing you can do about it. And when we have these power outages, DTE really doesn't pay any penalty. The fine that was just talked about, I think, is a really good idea. And actually, although DTE does lose some revenue from the times they're out, there are a lot of people who have natural gas generators, so instead of paying it to DTE Electric, you end up paying to DTE Natural Gas. And I don't know how anybody could have endorsed having 2 monopolies rather than 1. The other thing is, as was brought up, DTE, by one study, is the 4th dirtiest electrical utility, and there's really nothing that's being done to improve that. And also the fact that there's a cap on the number of people in Michigan who can put rooftop solar is literally mind-boggling. So to me, what my message to the Public Service Commission would be is, instead of, you have to talk about the blocking and tackling the rates and all that, but really, how can we change this business model so it can be much more attuned to what the residents of Michigan want, which is really, it's reliability, affordability, and sustainability, RAS. Thank you.
Over here?
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Jacob Dean McGranahan. I've been a resident of Washtenaw County for 8 years. And Mrs. Dingell and the rest, I want to address you today because I'm frustrated with the service and maintenance from our utility companies in recent years. Power outages appear to be the norm in August of 2021, 2022, and 2023. Even in the winter of 2023, an ice storm left residents of Washtenaw County without power and heat for several days. Boldly, DTE has even applied for a rate increase, and there have been over 1,100 comments on case U21297, which is their rate increase application, for negative, it's just all negative response. Nobody wants a rate increase when we have all these power outages that are happening. My most recent frustration with DTE are with the storms that occurred on the 24th of August and 25th. On August 24th, Ypsilanti received 6 inches of rainfall in 6 hours. Now, where I live is a minimal flood risk, but on that day, the Ypsilanti Community Utilities Authority failed to capture all the rainwater, and subsequently, I had 11 inches of sewage backup that went in my basement through the floor drain. Now, that morning, I had a service company come out and say, all right, we're going to do some remediation tomorrow. Great. That night, I lost power. They couldn't do anything, and they couldn't do anything for 2 days. I had a sewage-filled basement for 2 days. Because we lost power, losing power on top of an already failed utility added insult to injury, and it made our lives incredibly difficult. I understand that with Michigan's Public Act of 222, the water utility company wouldn't be held responsible when damages were caused by a defect. However, in my mind, not preparing your infrastructure for climate change and intense storms is a defect. The water commissioner even said, none of these pipes are designed for the 50-year storm. Pipes are usually a 10-year rain. And the amount of rain you get in like this, or even a 100-year rain, is a huge amount. No doubt there were some full pipes there. And no doubt I had a basement filled with sewage. So, in conclusion, I don't want to live in a future where backups and blackouts are the norm. And I hope my voice is heard here amongst others who share my concern to hold the utility companies accountable for preparing what lies ahead. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joanne Kuda. I live in Northfield Township, and that's between Ann Arbor and Whitmore Lake. I'm on 10 acres. I am finishing up getting a whole house generator, and I've been looking at this for 2 years. You know, I couldn't believe the cost. I had many contractors come out. I was really glad that Menards and Costco started selling them because I did get one at Menards, but to find a contractor to put it in was a hurdle. So anyway, it's finishing up, and it's going to cost me anywhere between $12,000 and $13,000. Well, the same contractor, my very first quote 2 years ago was $19,000. So there is some markup when you have the contractor do the whole job. But I just think, you know, burying the lines is the answer. And one of you mentioned, you know, the CEO earning $11 million. Well, I had heard it's $1 million a mile to bury lines. Why is that cost so high to begin with? So anyway, I'm kind of curious too if Ann Arbor is able to create their own utility. Are they going to be working off of DTE's equipment, or are they going to have to, you know, scrap that and come up with a new system of their own? So I'd like to know, you know, just how that would work. I've got property up in Grand Traverse County, and they have a real good system. They have a cooperative that's outside the city limits. We get actually rebates, and in the city, they're like Wyandotte. They have their own power and light. So I think there's ways to go on this, but it's been very frustrating.
You're my constituent, and I also I'm looking at generators, so maybe we talk after. But because it's just gotten to that point with my mother and everything. But I think Senator Irwin's a good person to talk about Ann Arbor, right?
Oh, I just wanted to add one thing. Why can't DTE buy these whole house generators in bulk? I know it doesn't fit their business model, but you know, they'd get a lower price and then contract with the electrical contractors that they want to, that they think are reliable. You know, it would just be a better savings for the ratepayer. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying. Hello. Yeah, I'm just trying to talk as little as possible because I talk too much and there's so many of you we want to hear from. But I was called out, so very, very briefly. Yes, there is a clause in the Michigan Constitution that allows any community to set up their own public utility. It requires a 3/5 vote, a supermajority of the residents. Ann Arbor has been looking at this. There are some folks, including myself, who support looking into this option because munis tend to have cheaper, cleaner, more reliable power. And so your question was very specific, though, like would Ann Arbor have to acquire the existing poles and wires and distribution infrastructure, substations and whatnot in order to make this work? Well, there are some folks who want to do it a different way. They want to sort of set up their own poles and wires and kind of do it piecemeal through a sustainable energy utility is what they're talking about, and then kind of knit it all together over time. And that's one approach. Another approach is to do exactly what you said, have the city acquire all the poles and wires and substations. There's, I think, a lot of debate about now whether that would make sense or not. In my view, what we're doing right now is we're renting all of that equipment. And as you know, if you rent, you tend to pay even more than you would if you own, and then at the end of the term, you have nothing. If we were to own the equipment, we would pay less to own it, I think, and certainly over a long period of time, and then we would actually own it. So the way I look at it is we can continue to pay to rent, or we can pay to own, which gives us the accountability and the authority to make the changes that we desperately need.
We've been joined by Representative Jimmy Wilson, too, who everybody's been in this bad weather, so we told him you were coming. Okay, move to this side. Thanks.
Hello, thank you all for being here tonight under the extreme weather we're having and the accidents and so forth. It's much appreciated by myself and I'm sure everyone here. My name is Clara Ostrander. I am a resident of Milan Township. I'm a third-generation farmer. My home and farmstead has been in my family for 154 years. I'm very proud of my farm and our heritage. And my goal and my husband's goal is to see to it that that farm is able to be passed on to our son and to our grandchildren and future generations and continue on as it has been in our past. The reason why I'm here tonight is the topic and the concerns that everyone is presenting. Our solution, or part of the solution, will be going to the renewable energies, that being solar and wind. And I'm sure all of you have heard this over and over again and have had many discussions on that. What I don't think a lot of people understand is there are many landowners and farmers like myself throughout the whole state of Michigan that are willing to help with that cause. They're willing to help by leasing their land or a portion of it to solar energy. We were approached back in 2019, 2020 by a solar developer to do just that, to have solar put on our farm along with approximately 8 other landowners in our township. The total combined land is a small percentage of our township. We have 19,000 acres of farmland in our township, and the whole project was just a little over 1% of that. So it's not a big impact on the farming community as such. And as you're aware, with the surpluses and other federal programs that are out there, having less farmland is not going to make an impact on our farm products that are produced today. That being said, at that point in time, our local township had developed an ordinance and approved us to have solar put on our land. Unfortunately, after the state testing and so forth began, other local residents who do not own land, they are living in our township because a farmer at one point in time had to sell an acre off to help pay their medical bills and expenses, now live in the township and feel as though they have the right to control the other people that do own the land. It's unfortunate, and I know a lot of people don't understand that. They are not paying our tax bills. We pay the tax bills. We make sure that the land is tiled and is fittable for farming. But we looked at an opportunity to help our state, help our country, help our future generations, and guess what? It's been completely taken away from us. And it's not unique to Milan Township. It's all over the state of Michigan. And it's wrong. It's wrong for anyone to say you can take away a landowner's rights. It's wrong to say, no, you can't help the cause of Michigan, which we so greatly need. Now, I understand that there is a bill that's going to be proposed to take that responsibility and to control the siting of these solar and wind farms at the Michigan Public Service Commission and not at the local township level. I agree 100% with that change, and I hope each one of you will vote yes to that bill. Please don't look at it as a means of taking away local control. I, for one, am very supportive of local township officials. I've had many family members in the past 2 generations be part of those boards. But this issue is way too big for the local governments. This requires background knowledge, education on this topic. This is not something that's been ever presented before. You have to understand, this isn't something like, well, let's put some gravel down Wells Road because it needs it. There's more potholes there. Or let's schedule our trash pickup day for this day. Those types of issues should be handled at the local level. That's not this. So again, please, when you see this bill come forward, say yes to it and help the local farmers out and let us support Michigan. Thank you.
Over here, sir. Yep.
Good evening, Senator Irwin. I live in Darlington.
Can we just remind people to give us your name too?
My name is Daniel Enos, E-N-O-S. I live in the Darlington subdivision of East Ann Arbor. Yep, Senator Irwin knows what I'm referring to. And we have a lot of mature trees that have a nasty habit of falling on utility lines. Not only that, there has been so much rain lately and the weather has been so warm that it's resulted in explosive growth of spurious vegetation along the easement lines, which carries with it considerable fire risk. That's just one part of my argument. The other part is we aspire to make all these worthwhile changes that have been discussed so far this evening, but one thing that I have not heard discussed is how can we best work with what we have now in terms of proper maintenance and management, more effective, I should say. DTE, over the time I've lived in Darlington, has made many improvements in the distribution system. We now have larger transformers. Back in '89, they replaced all the secondary wiring along the lines that run north-south. They went further to install fused cutouts on the primary wires at the end of each block. If you look at the top of the pole, you can see the cutouts that are designed to blow open in the event of a short or ground. So it doesn't trip the breaker at the substation over on Packard. But what this summer I realized how badly the growth was going on my lot, and I spent maybe 2 days whacking it down, trying to be safe in the process. You've got to be very careful working around electrical equipment. And my neighbor to the north of me enthusiastically chipped in and had a good portion of the stuff on the tip of her lot next to the easement line cut down. And I was very pleased to see that happen. DTE did quite a big job the last time they were through trimming our trees. So we're in better shape than many places are. But without burning up any more time, I will say that I would hope that individual property owners and local leaders will consider very seriously the things that can be done to make what we have work, assuming that it's going to be some time and expense before we have anything different. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Over here.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Peter Sinclair. I'm a videographer residing in Midland. I want to affirm what my friend Clara just said about the plight of farmers who wish to site clean energy on their lands. I've been around the state interviewing a number of these folks, and what we're seeing is that farmers and landowners who wish to site clean energy are being harassed, intimidated, and even physically threatened by mobs that look a whole lot like the book burners and the anti-fax conspiracists that we see roaming around all over online. And even the township boards are also being intimidated and threatened with recall by people who are often wealthy and privileged enough that they can afford to drop $5,000 or $10,000 on a township trustee race, and frequently they are successful in replacing pro-clean energy boards with anti. And I'll just say Representative Ayash, I believe, has some legislation, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, that is supposed to address this. I hope you will give favorable consideration to that. And one last thing is that in talking to the economic development people in counties where there is extensive clean energy, like Gratiot and Isabella and Huron, one thing that these developers do when they move in is because they're going to be generating a product, clean electricity, that requires good transmission to move out to a market, they will very often, on their own, using private funds, improve the local grid infrastructure to such a degree that it has really helped improve the reliability in those areas. And this would be a quick way, you know, barring some kind of immediate reorganization of our utility structure, this would be a quick way to start to mobilize private money to address some of the deficiencies in the grid and create more reliability. So I hope you'll consider that as well. And thank you so much for holding this meeting.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Kramer. I'm a resident in the city of Ypsilanti. I'm going to give my comments, and then I'm going to give some surprisingly positive feedback at the end. So I've lived in a number of different places. I've lived in North Carolina. I've lived in Indiana. I lived in Lubbock, Texas, right before they had switched to a private power source. I've been in Michigan for 4 years now. I've never lived anywhere where my power goes out this frequently for this long. People have told me, oh, ha, welcome to Michigan, or oh, ha, DTE sucks. No, it does not have to be this way. My in-laws live in Heartland. We've shacked up with them in the times in 2023 that we've lost power. They don't even know who supplies their power, right? They don't know who they're writing their checks to because their lines are buried. It's not an issue for them. They don't lose power. I have been doing canvassing with the group in town. I'm not speaking for them. These are my comments. They want public power. They're in Ann Arbor. You can narrow that down. These are not their comments. This is for me. I've talked to a number of people through this group, right? People who have lost power in 1 storm, 2 storms, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. I've talked to people who had to pay out the nose to stay at a hotel room. I've talked to people who could not afford to stay in a hotel room. They had to camp in their houses at 46 degrees. I've talked to people who have lost food, lost medicine. You know the stories. You've heard from the constituents, I'm sure. My concern is, especially coming into the election year that is 2024, and especially while there may be some stuff going on in Lansing and on Capitol Hill, just remember that there are actual people behind all of these comments and all of these data points. It's not a political exercise. It's not an economic, like, these are actual people, and they're suffering a lot. I'm aware that there has been some messaging from, DTE. I hear their ads on my podcast app. I listen to podcasts about old movies. I don't know. I have like I said, I have 2 positive points of feedback. So the first one is to Chairman Scripps. Both times in February and July, when my power had gone out for the extended amount of time, as soon as I filed my MPSC complaint towards the end of that time, my power came back pretty quickly after that. I'm not sure what the mechanics of that are. As far as I'm concerned, it can stay a mystery. I'm just glad to have had that kind of response. It's embarrassing that I learned about this from Reddit, so I would appreciate a little bit more information. I've talked to coworkers who don't even know that you can file a complaint, so a little bit more information would be good, but I'm glad it happened. My second positive piece of feedback is to the representatives that are here this evening, I've been aware over the course of the year that there's been more attention paid as more power events have been happening, and there's been more of an effort to, do learning, talking to folks in town, and get behind pieces of legislation that will hopefully be a positive step forward.
Thank you. I want to...
Hi. I am Denise Prelip, and I am from Lima Township. We have lived on our farm, purchased our farm, been there for 20 years. In the last 10 years, the reliability has decreased, as everyone in this room has told you. 12 appliances I've had to replace. Where we live, we are normally the last to come back online because we're in a very rural area. We have so many brownouts or power surges, not just power being off or losing power. Our power surges and our brownouts, 12 appliances in the last 10 years. Now we're going to talk about a really expensive option when you live in rural America, which is a well. A $17,000 well I have had to replace. Mind you, my insurance company paid for a part of that, but not all of it. With that, I put a surge protector on my well. So that came out of my pocket. That's just for my business. I've had to replace my well pump at my home because of a power surge. So these are 2 wells we're talking about. With that, because I'm self-employed and I own my own business, we now have power outage line item in our yearly budget. We have not been able to expand our business because of that line item. We've had to buy a generator specifically for our business in order to feed our cattle, to run the water in order to water our plants, because this is how we make our living, so we have to have water for our plants, for our cattle, for our chickens. This generator cannot run all of that at one time. So our power has to be allocated at necessary times. So as we're talking to the chairperson and you're wondering about the financial aspects of what power outages are, if you would like to look at my line item every year, I can tell you that. It's not fun. But the brownouts and the surges that we have in our area are extreme. It's not just losing power because of a storm. We're accustomed to that, I guess is what I want to say. We've had so many, we just know that we're going to do that. But when DTE comes on back online, the surge that we get in our area, or when they take us down to bring another part up, it's extreme. We don't even turn our breaker, we turn everything off. And we usually run 24 hours on a generator before we turn our circuit breakers on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's an important story. I want to make a comment responding to you saying that they're humans. I think that those of us up here understand that better than anybody. And Dan will tell you, I actually testified at the Dearborn meeting. First of all, in the February storms, and actually these summer storms, I've had fire chiefs calling me because they've had down power lines that are fire threats and they haven't been able to get through. When fire chiefs can't get through, that's a problem. I had a farmer in western Washtenaw that was living by himself now that had 150 sheep and was actually suicidal that weekend. And I had to make sure he didn't do any harm to himself and get himself back stable again. I helped the man. I got fire department to come and help the man who lost his oxygen and couldn't get downstairs and was close to death. We understand more, everybody here has those stories. We get it, we know it. We are communicating, we're trying to fix it. We want you to know that we want to hear these stories and we are acting on them, but don't anybody think that the people up here do not know that every one of these stories is real. They're real human beings, that restaurants are closing, that people who can't afford to put food on their table are still losing their whole refrigerator and their freezer. And we know we have to do something. I want you to know that.
Joel Vergan, City of Ypsilanti, and thank you all for being here. I just wanted to say something about energy resiliency in more general terms. It's great that we're increasing the budget for trimming the trees, but we're still going to have trees, still going to have overhead power lines, and still going to have storms. Power is going to go out. Some solutions to that right now, I'll be brief, but I'm going to talk briefly about gas and local electric storage at EVs. Not everybody can afford a gas-powered whole house generator, suffice it to say. But if you just have a gas water heater, that's enough to give you hot water, obviously, but keep your pipes from freezing in the wintertime and perhaps warm up your house a little bit. So I know it's popular in places like maybe Ann Arbor, Michigan or Berkeley, California to outlaw gas appliances, but where we have installed gas lines, these form an important backup for resiliency, especially in the wintertime for folks who lose their power. I'll move on quickly. You got people here who want to generate solar during the day, off-peak times, and folks who want cheaper electricity during peak times, and other folks who want to put in storage and maybe sell electricity back, net metering or whatever during peak times. I think the future lies or could lie with people generate electricity midday, folks who maybe have solar or electric vehicle or maybe just a power pack, essentially buying that electricity when it's cheap during midday, selling it back to the grid during peak times. This would improve resiliency, it would reduce the load that DTE has to carry during peak times. Imagine also, for example, you have an electric vehicle. You take your F-150 Lightning as an example, you drive it to work. You plug it in at work, charge it up during the day. When that power is cheap, you drive it home, you plug it in, and you power your house during the peak times, or you sell it back to the electric company. Power goes out, you still can keep your fridge cold. Battery goes down, you drive it to a place that has a fast DC charger that has electricity, you fill it up in an hour, and you bring it back home. And so these are ideas for resiliency. And I really think with all the power outages and problems we have, the idea is to have and encourage backups. Let's not be in a hurry to disconnect gas. Let's encourage net metering during peak times, people to be able to have local storage, and do something to help folks buy that and install it. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Mark Daskin. My wife and I live in the Ann Arbor Hills area of Ann Arbor. And I just want to start by thanking Representative Dingell for organizing this. I know it has been a very boring week in Washington, and I'm glad that we could provide a little excitement to you. So my wife and I have lost power 3 times this summer alone, in June, July, and August, for something in excess of, I think, 4 days. And it seems to me that while it's okay to have nominal fines of $38 if you qualify, I think the fines need to be much, much higher. I think that DTE, for example, should be charged at least $100 a day per customer, and you don't need to qualify. They know who lost power. People report it to them. The other thing is that my wife and I are in the process of contracting for an emergency generator. This is going to cost us on the order of $14,000 plus $500 to DTE to upgrade our gas meter. So we have to pay DTE because their system is so unreliable, and they put in a gas meter that's not adequate for our putting in a backup system at our own expense. So it seems to me, and by the way, I have an email from them saying that they're going to get back to me in 10 business days. That email is dated September 15th. It's now 21 days or 20 days since then. I haven't heard from them. So it'd be nice if they at least responded in a timely manner. But in addition to fines like that, it seems to me that one way of getting their attention would be to tell DTE that if a customer loses power 3 times in 1 year, that they have to pay 3/4 of the cost of putting in an emergency generator. That would get their attention pretty quickly. And I think they should be forced to put in these new gas meters for free to anybody who wants to upgrade to an emergency generator. By the way, putting in an emergency generator is another issue of social equity, because not everybody can afford $14,000 or $20,000 for an emergency generator.
Also, some people rent, like me, and my landlord don't give a crap. That's me talking.
I couldn't see who was saying, right?
My landlord doesn't care enough to do this generator thing. So, like, this is definitely an equity issue.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ken Monroe. I'm a new resident of the city. I have two issues. One, I drive around a lot looking at things over. I want to know, why do we continue to let homes and developers plant trees under the lines, under electric utility lines? There should be no tree anywhere near a utility line. We're still planting them there. And I drive down Socia, and it's wrong. There should be no trees anywhere near a utility line. And that's a homeowner issue and a developer issue, and you got to address it somehow. Because otherwise you're going to always have these trees coming down. Now to Congressman Dingell's issue. I lived in Grosse Pointe Farms for 20 years. I will tell you, we got flooded as much as you did. The issue is the infrastructure is no longer capable of. You've got old pipes in the ground here that can't handle the flow of water. And so you've got a huge issue that won't be solved inexpensively, but you'll keep getting flooded until you get the right kind of pipes put in the ground to take the water away from the house. And it's worse if you get south of Flint, south of Saginaw, to me it's worse because down here it's all clay. My home in Harbor Springs is all sand. Water went over, you never saw the water just evaporated in half an hour. So you got clay down here, and you got old pipes. You're going to keep flooded forever if the cities don't take care of that. And it's a real expensive thing to do, but you're going to the 100-year flood is forever. You're going to be flooded. That's it. Oh, by the way, I had a co-op up north. I got a check every year. That was my dividend.
Oh. Thank you. I want to say that we all know up here that I've learned more about sewers than I ever wanted to know. I have, especially as I've picked up Western Washtenaw, I've gone into every community. These guys know it. It is a real problem. We have to do it. But you can't keep kicking cans down the road. That's part of the problem. You have to invest in infrastructure. And we have passed legislation at the federal level that is putting money to the states. That's what we are working at the federal, state, and local level together. But once we start to make these changes, we got to invest. We have to maintain what we are going to address. And we are all working together. Look, water doesn't, I know this because I lived in a community that flooded more than it ever should have flooded and still does. This last storm was, most people, especially in Wayne County, didn't understand the last storms because they were so used to Dearborn and Dearborn Heights and parts of Detroit flooding, they didn't know what to do when it was in other communities and they didn't even realize that it was happening. Water doesn't stop because it hit a city line. I'm going into the next little town. It flows. And we all have to work together because we cannot get $30 million for every township and city to fix this. We got to work together. So it's not what tonight's about, but I want you to know I am learning more and doing more. And actually, the EPA administrator is coming in next Tuesday and doing an event at Yucca because this is so important. So we know it. Everybody up here does. Thank you for that comment, though. Okay.
Good evening, and thank you very much for letting us address
all of you and share our opinions with you, and thank you for braving the storm. When I read the notice for this meeting, I was focusing a little more on the infrastructure side of things. So I'm going to maybe spread the love a little bit beyond DTE. For background, my name is Chuck Boltman. I have been a 25-year resident of Ann Arbor, but now for the last 20 months, I have lived in Ypsilanti. I bought a 1870s house within walking distance of downtown. And we were immersed right into the middle of a infrastructure project that, frankly, is a little bit out of control. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about. So I attended the Ypsi City Council meeting the other night, and I told a quick story about one of my architecture student colleagues when I was a freshman who was building a model on a floor that looked just as clean and new as the one you're sitting on, except he was burning it in the process. And the architecture faculty who actually built that floor walked up behind him and asked him a very important question. What if what you make is less than what you destroy? That's a profound question for an architect. What if the appendectomy kills the patient? Right now, the infrastructure project in Ypsi City is choking the city. It was just announced that 3 businesses are closing. Other businesses are thinking about it. I know that because I have 2 small businesses there. I operate my architecture practice there, and I co-own a bed and breakfast there. We are all talking. This is really important. I do not at all, I work in the construction industry. I don't relish bad-mouthing a construction project, but this is not the cleanest infrastructure project I've ever seen, by far. 4 corners of one intersection torn up all at the same time. Across the street from my house is the Gilbert, which is a senior assisted living center. There's a lot of people there who use walkers and wheelchairs and all different kinds of mobility assisting things. They can't go down the sidewalk because the temporary signage, the metal piece of the base is into the sidewalk too far. I've tripped on them. This is not the way it should be done. These are not careful people who are really saying, they're not thinking through when they do their work. How are these residents operating? To add insult to injury, we're now getting into the holiday season. Ypsi works their butt off, as I have learned, to bring people downtown with all different kinds of programs, and they solicited MDOT and asked them to change their patterns, and MDOT said no. I have personally worked in construction, and I have worked through the night because that's what the project demanded. We need your help to reel this in and speak to these authority figures and make them listen to the needs of the residents. They can build a beautiful, beautiful road, and if all the businesses close, the patient died. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Patrick Dayton. I'm a resident in Ypsilanti Township, just outside of Depot Town. I have been a resident of Washtenaw County my entire life, except for 4 years I was at Michigan State, and it has only gotten just worse. The reliability of everything has just only gotten worse. And it's honestly, it's very frustrating from a consumer standpoint to see not only rates go up, but also record profits also go up at the same time. Yeah. It is very frustrating also seeing these rates go up, as well as the quoted infrastructure bill for burying lines or for getting other utilities to come out and do tree trimming, anything along that line. It's also, I mean, like, I do appreciate, earlier on we were kind of talking about like information transparency being a very important thing here. It feels like DTE is intentionally doing the bare minimum to provide people with accurate information as far as any sort of updates on power restoration, outage actual numbers. And even like, as a type 1 diabetic, do you know how much insulin I can buy for $35? And I consider myself to be a lucky one. I have pretty decent insurance through my job. Some of my friends are not that way. So having their outages with the potential chance of any of that insulin or any other medication going bad in the refrigerator. And even just to kind of add on to that too, right? Like efficacy of medications with temperature fluctuations. My insurance only allows me a 3-month order at a time. So if my insulin is bad for the next couple months, what am I to do? I now have to go out of pocket, talk with my insurance provider, talk with my doctor, and like, I'm just speaking anecdotally as a diabetic. There are so many other illnesses that other people deal with that are much worse than mine, and it's kind of enraging seeing what DTE is promising within their newsletters, and then how little is actually being done. And so I'm very hopeful that everyone here, and like seriously, thank you for taking the time to come out here and listen to us. Like, we really need you to step it up and hit them where they're, you need to hit them in the pockets. Because right now, we talk about asking and asking and asking, telling them, we're asking you to do this. We can't do that. We need to tell them we have an expectation, you need to meet it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Marty Colburn. I'm the city manager of Chelsea, Michigan, about 20 miles west of here. Prior to being the city manager in Chelsea, I was the city manager of Traverse City for 8 years. So I've been affiliated with providing and managing electrical systems here in Chelsea and affiliated with Traverse City Light and Power. It's a challenge for small munis because of the lay of the land and working with what I call the big three of the industry within the state that we work with. It's important to talk very briefly about an incident a month ago, because there's an end story I want you to understand. There was a contractor for consumers clearing brush and such underneath. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but he kicked a guy wire, didn't see it, kicked a guy wire all the way up into the high lines, tripped all the systems. It wasn't just Chelsea that went down. We've got our 3 substations. We're a small electrical muni, but Manchester was out. The city, of course, Chelsea was out. Stockbridge over in Ingham County was out. Pinckney was out. Gregory was out. And all those farms in between were out. Due to human error, it does happen, and thank God nobody was hurt. That being said, we went through all the emergency systems that we had, and we were right there with consumer staff, offering our help, our support. I was there myself and listening to the conversations, and they were working through the process of their orders that they have through an engineering department of how to step up the system to make sure it goes on safely. This was tripped out at 12:45 on a Friday about a month ago. At 5:05, our first substation went on. And for 2 more hours, we were pleading with them, turn on the other 2. Somewhere in that system, not ours, I'm talking about the human side of consumers, they thought when they tripped on the one, all 3 go on. This is all laid out. This is all planned out. This is all engineered. This is all pre-planned. It's a human error. And so for 2 more hours, I had a hospital with 133 beds down. Now, they did have backup generators. I've got dialysis centers. The schools, the businesses. Here's the lesson that I learned, though. I was called into the manager's office of one of our major industries. Marty, I want to talk to you about that electrical outage. What happened? I explained it all to him. Had documentation, can show it was not the muni's fault. I'm defending consumers at this point because, and what I'm saying, even though, yes, I'm telling them it was consumers that did it, but explaining to them the whole process of how it works. But it was very telling because I found out they lost 6 figures in those 7 hours, meaning losses of sending employees home that don't get paid, but having to call in specialists, cool down equipment, shut down robots, hundreds of employees that were impacted right before Labor Day. But what went through, and I could see the point of the question was, if it had been the small muni's fault, they're willing to make a claim. But when they realized it wasn't, and it was a 6-figure loss, they're hesitant to make a claim because they have to call in the attorneys to make the big fight against the big boys. It's not a fair level playing field. It would have been easy to take on Chelsea, but they realized it wasn't us. And so they're going to be a good part of the community and not sue us and not fight us and not make claims. But they're not willing to take it on to the state and to the big boys. So when you're doing that legislation and thinking about the processes, please keep in mind the smaller communities and trying to find a way of leveling the field. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Lee Andre, and I was the elected official that didn't write very well on the form.
I'm sorry.
I'm a director for the Soil and Water Conservation District. And one thing I'd like to say to the people on the panel, that when they write laws and when the PSA, when the Public Service Commission, they can look to the Conservation District. Since 1935, we've tried to save soil and water and improve the quality of it. And energy is a land use issue when you talk about solar and wind. So look to us if there's a district in every county, and I think it's an underutilized resource. The other thing is, the gentleman who just spoke, maybe you don't know, or they don't know, that there's 42 munis in Michigan, and they all could face the same dilemma that that gentleman did. And when you look at your community solar bill that's currently in the Energy Committee, that bill starts to make the distribution system, which has been mentioned here, it kind of turns it into a collection system. And so if the power companies know that their power comes from communities, from a very distributed source, these small community solar projects could be a way to make the grid twice as important, because now it's not only distribution, it's doing collection. And so I'm hoping that that bill looks to the generation side, not so much to the consumer side, because if each community can integrate their energy supply into their community, you'll have more local support, and you'll have a massive collection system rather than just a distribution system. So I'd also like to comment on the gentleman that said something about natural gas. You know, if we talk about storage systems for energy, Michigan has a lot of stored natural gas. And if that gas was regenerative natural gas, renewable natural gas, then the carbon footprint of burning all these fossils would not be the same. So I would like to point out that a non-point source of carbon dioxide is hard to control, but a point source is a different story. And I'd like to see those two words used in the conversation about carbon dioxide emissions and methane emissions, because that's the one we use in water, and we can improve water quality by attacking both. But natural gas is a great storage facility, and it's a load following part of our grid. And the last thing I'd like to say is to the Public Service Commission is there is so much misinformation going around about what kind of chemicals drip off of solar panels, how much land is used for solar. Are we ever going to be able to have that much solar and still have food to eat? And also the question about burying power lines. If the Public Service Commission could set up a library where each one of those claims that are being made across the community, both positive and negative, can be based on scientific information without politicizing it. When someone says to me, I think all the power lines should be buried, and I can say, go to the Public Service Commission and look on the pros and cons of burying power lines, and there's some real facts there, that would be a great public service. So thank you.
Thank you. And those that are in line, this is where we do, because Dan has a 4.5-hour drive, and it is his anniversary tomorrow, and I want him to get there safely. We'll come to closing remarks after the people here. So, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mia Lanier Durkins. I am a resident under Jimmy Wilson. And my question is, the emergency relief that is provided, how is the information getting out? My mom was one of the individuals, lives in a place where in August her electricity was out for a couple of days, and the worry that she felt about her groceries going bad, just going grocery shopping. Who is putting this word out, and how and where? And yeah, pretty much that's what I just want to know, how people know about these resources.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've tried to do a fair amount of media when the credits were increased. That was earlier this year. Last year. And then when we actually increased them, tying them to the rate of increase, we used it as another opportunity. There's information on our website, but I'm also hearing really clearly that more needs to be done, that the folks who are eligible or believe they're eligible for these dollars aren't getting the information that is available. It's one of the reasons that we wanted to make the credits automatic. We saw less than 1% of eligible customers in Michigan actually filing to claim their credits. And so somebody else mentioned earlier today, the utility knows when your power is out. They know if you're eligible under our rules for a credit, and they should be automatic. And so that was one of the changes, but clearly we've got to do more to get the word out. It's things like this, but also and the sort of work that we do more regularly, but I'm also hearing pretty clearly that not everybody's aware of what's out there, and that means we need to up our game.
I suggest maybe getting boots on the ground when the power goes out, going to the apartment complexes that are eligible, because I know where my mom lives, there are many buildings and many people inside those buildings who are eligible, who possibly lost their groceries and did not have a resource, did not know. So yes, doing more, getting people out there to those places and not expecting for residents to come to you or to have to search. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mia.
Hello. My name is Samara Roberts. I've been a resident in Washtenaw County for 22 years. I'm 23. I currently live in North Carolina, but I'm back home for an internship right now with the Public Defender Office. I will say it seems like the older I get, the more wiser I'm getting. And more specifically, more so when I moved to North Carolina, I really started paying attention to my text messages from my grandmother. When I was living here, she would always tell me, oh, I'm having power outages, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's so sad. But now, since I'm in North Carolina and I'm adulting more, I'm like, you're always having power outages. What is up with that? I've never experienced a power outage here at, Ypsilanti myself, but I guess I'm speaking on my grandmother's behalf. I do have a question. I don't want to make assumptions, per se. I don't want to say that DTE isn't making steps to build resilience, but I do want to ask you, what actions are they actually taking to ensure grid integrity and security during inclement weather, natural disasters, and just other events to ensure that this crisis can be prevented in the near future? So.
We wonder that too.
I want to be really clear that I'm not speaking for DTE here, but we have, so some of it is the increased tree trimming, that we were way behind on tree trimming schedules, and those dollars can only be used for tree trimming and are separately recovered in how they do it at a rate that's less expensive to customers. We've also approved a fair amount in terms of grid hardening, some of the pole top work that can reduce outages, can make those poles withstand some of the strikes that otherwise would have taken down wires, and we've seen reliability improvements from that. Some of it is about making sure that the dollars that are going into what's called strategic capital, the preventative work on the system, are actually being used for that and not being diverted. And I want to be clear, sometimes the causes for which they're diverted are things like storm response and other things that are valid sources, but it means that we're taking the money out of where it's supposed to go in terms of hardening the system and making the system more reliable to chase the dollars that are needed to restore it, and will fall further and further behind. So trying to get tighter to make sure that the dollars that have been approved and are being paid for by customers focused on reliability are actually going towards reliability. So there have been steps, and I think when we look at the data in the places where the trees have been trimmed or the hardening work has happened, we've seen improvements. And now that it's been a couple of years, we've seen, but I'm still not sure that we're keeping up with the changes that we started with in terms of the storms are getting more severe and more frequent. And even though I think we're doing more, I'm not sure that it's actually keeping up with what's necessary given the changes that are being driven by climate change.
So I would like to add one thing, and I'm not going to say too much about it because everybody can Google it. There's a Bridge, Michigan article from March 10th that says the headline, DTE Energy cut operations to meet profits months before power outage. And then some of the blurbs is, it paid out $700 million to investors in 2022, then paused hiring and maintenance to hit revenue targets and pay dividends early this year. And that information came out just after that March storm, when just so many thousands of people were going without power. So that's something to follow up on.
Are there any resources if like people's, refrigerator goes out or anything? Because my grandmother, food went really bad and she had to get a new refrigerator and things of that sort, which she barely could afford. So are there any resources for that? If she could.
Credits are dependent on how many customers are, this is one of the frustrating parts, but it's dependent on how many other customers are out. There's sort of a recognition within our rules that it takes longer to restore power if 10% of the system is out. And, but for an individual who's lost power, they just know that they lost power and the food in their refrigerator's out. So our credits today are dependent on if it's fewer on what we call blue sky days where there are few outages, but there is some allowance for the amount of time that it takes to restore a large number of customers when major storms hit.
Okay. And when there is a situation here in Washtenaw, your grandmother needs help with food or other support. There's social service organizations that any of our offices want to help connect them with. That's very much a part of what we're all trying to do. Jeff looks like he wants to comment.
I'll back that up and say that all of our offices are engaged and interested in helping. I know that Congresswoman Dingell is always super engaged, and we've all probably gotten calls from her every time these power outages happen. But what I wanted to say is that we've talked a lot tonight about these outage credits which exist. They are too small and they don't increase over time, which I think they should. But what haven't been mentioned in direct response to your question is for people who are SNAP eligible, there is a SNAP replacement opportunity. When these outages have happened, I've tended to push that out through my office on the website and the social media channels and all of that. But for folks who are SNAP eligible, there is an additional opportunity to get food replacement dollars through your SNAP benefits. And folks who are SNAP eligible have to pursue that through SNAP. And in our offices, I think, will all be happy to help people do that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've got two people in line, and I'm going to ask you if you want to speak, and then it's 8 o'clock. And
we have a kid in line, too. We have 3 people.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. We'll give, this may be the star of the show. Thank you, guys.
Hello, my name is Destiny. I am a resident of Ypsilanti Township. Dear representatives, DTE has a big problem in our area. It seems like we lose power all the time. A lot of people end up with rotten food. Some medicine needs to be refrigerated, but can't when we don't have power. Not everyone can replace these items. Generators are not an option for everyone. Not everyone can physically use a generator. If it's too hot, people can have a heat stroke. And if it's too cold, people can freeze to death. The risk of fire increases with power outages. When we lose power, it is harder to do homework. I'm very upset at DTE because we've lost power too much in the last couple of years. We need a stronger power grid, and we need your support to hold DTE's responsibility. Thank you very much.
You were the best.
Summary of the whole damn thing.
Did anybody want to follow that?
I don't
That-
think
we all want to thank you for that, by the way.
Thank you, Destiny.
My name is Sarah McDonnell. I live in Ypsilanti. I just want to speak in defense of trees. I accept the fact that they are probably the major cause of power lines being torn down, but if the lines are buried, that wouldn't happen. Trees also have an economic value. I know that because we have a lot of them in our yard around our house, and we take advantage of that all the time to keep our energy bills down. If we can show you our energy bill, we are consistently in the lowest percentile of users. So I just want to point out, trees are great. I'm not just some tree-hugging liberal. They have economic value as well. Secondly, I just want to point out, speaking of gas, we have gas items in our house that use gas. And so we've been grateful during the outages that we could have some degree of heat and use our stove and get hot water. However, we want to do the right thing and replace those gas appliances with electric or whatever is the more sustainable, climate-friendly option. But looking forward to a future where we have God knows how many outages every year, what incentive do I have to electrify my home and do the right thing? I don't appreciate it that a monopoly that's making billions of dollars in profit every year is making it difficult for me to do the one little thing that I can do to help us still live in this world going forward. To me, the problem is simple: bury the lines and break up the monopolies. If DTE had to operate in a competitive market, they wouldn't operate. They'd be out of business because everybody here would dump them for someone else. Thank you.
Thank you. The last comment before we close.
My name's Leonard Ostrander, Monroe County, Milan Township. My last power outage was 8 days. $350 in gasoline to keep power. Out of those 8 days, I continued to go to my job at work. I can tell you on 4 of those days, I watched DTE sit on a dead-end road and do nothing. My power was restored by somebody from out of state. For the last 3 times my power's been out of state people have came in and replaced my power to get me up and running. As one lady said earlier, it was just a thing they flipped, that fuse. I went to DTE. I said, there's a fuse that's popped down. All you gotta do is pop it back in. You're gonna put 34 houses, 35 houses, the plot of Azalea back online. I can't do that. DTE needs to be held accountable. Profits that they make, I understand profits. The owner of my company makes a lot of money. I don't make it, but I do my job for a paycheck. But when you're getting millions of dollars, you got people sitting on the side of the road doing jack squat. Now, I'm going to go on to climate change. The Dust Bowl was made by man in 1930. We're doing it again with climate change. You got a young lady up here. She would probably like to see us succeed in life and have kids. I'm worried about my grandkids having a life. You got townships stopping us. I can show you on my phone the last thing that they did to revise, or whatever they want to call it, to take away your power from the state so they don't have to follow you because they don't want renewable energy, because they don't want to look at it. They want to be able to drive down the road and see farm fields. Well, let me put in my solar. You can drive down the road and you can see the farm field by the setback, because I plan on putting hay all the way around it. And if it works out, I'll put sheep underneath it. That's called solar grazing. It can work. It can work both ways. You got to stop the townships from holding progress back. It's called technology. 30 years ago, we didn't carry a supercomputer on our hip. I'm not highly educated, but I use this a lot. It's a computer, nothing more. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Dan to close and thank him on behalf of all of us for coming. I want to tell you all that we really do hear you, and there's work going on at all levels. We need to strengthen the Public Service Commission. I'm going to be that blunt. We want all of the, we are all here, all of the legislators. We're here to help you. We're going to keep fighting. I think the youngest among us said it the best, although everybody was very good. We're going to keep having forums so you can talk to us, call any of us, let us know. But Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you to close, and also wish you a happy anniversary.
Thank you. So I want to start by thanking all of you. I will say every time we do one of these, either as the commission or in partnership with state legislators, and thank you, Congresswoman Dingell, for organizing this, I learned something. And I learned directly from the people who are experiencing these. And you know, it's the woman in the Purdue shirt. They're human beings behind each of these stories, and behind the numbers that we see at the commission. There's a whole lot of folks who have struggled to find a way to deal with this when the power goes out. Have worked on how to keep the insulin cold. It's the first time that I've actually heard. I mean, I know my insurance company does the same thing. They send me 3 months of supply. I have to buy it in 3-month allocations. I don't think I've ever stopped and thought, what does that mean for somebody who's on insulin where all 3 months are in the refrigerator? Like it's not a 1 week supply, it's a 3-month supply where the insurance company's not gonna come back. So those types of stories, I think, help to galvanize and make real the challenges that are in front of us. And you know, we've taken some steps. I think we can look at some of the data and say we're making some improvements, but it's not happening fast enough. And how do we sort of, as you said, Congresswoman, have this be a solution that all of us can contribute to, so that we've got a more reliable system, a more sustainable system, a more affordable system, so that we don't have to worry about the insulin, we don't have to worry about the chair that our 89-year-old grandmother needs to get up and down stairs, or the chair, my dad across the street has one as well, that doesn't recline or doesn't come back up from reclining if that's when the power goes out. That Destiny can do her homework without having to worry about whether there's lights on or whether the computer works. So these stories make it real for us, and I just want to say, on a rainy night in October, all of you have other things and better things that you could do, but I appreciate you coming out and sharing the stories to help make real the challenges that you see in your lives when the system doesn't operate the way that we all know that it should. So I'll just say thanks again, and thank you for organizing this.
And thank you to all the state legislators. You guys have the best state elected legislators. And to everybody here who knows how real global climate change is, these are legislators that are working every single day to help get that through, to fight for the future. Too many people want to make this either or. It's not either or. We have to do both. So thank you. Drive home safely. Everybody's going to be around to talk. And may we have no more power outages this year. Thank you.